Welcome to
What a block!
Triple Blockheads,
Back set, block down.
the podcast for all things volleyball.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Triple Blockheads. Makani here with Frank and Marc. We're going to talk about today, guys, the only thing that you actually can do as a coach to impact the game.
I don't agree with that.
I'm just joking,
funny,
but it is the thing that you can stop. The one time you can actually stop the game. So timeout management. We're going to kind of dive into what.
I thought we were going water cup throws, the old Jason Kidd strategy.
Oh, I just dropped the Gatorade bottle. Yeah,
Game
stoppage.
Third timeout.
We'll talk about when we like to talk. We're going off the rails here. We're going to talk about when you like to call a timeout, what kind of strategies you have there, and then I think the difference between club and collegiate, which will have kind of a lot of different perspectives on what you like to do in that timeout setup. Is it the NBA? Hey, the coaches are all in the middle of the circle, and then you guys go back, or you kind of do into the team right away. I think there's a lot of different styles that we can kind of talk about, pros and cons. But Marc, what are we talking about initially? Like, what are the scenarios that you like to call timeouts in?
Yeah. So there's definitely like initial ground rules that I've always had coaching wise was like, if you go on a 3 or 4 point run, I'm probably gonna call a timeout just to break up momentum. So that's maybe the just kind of auto ground rule. Now, when it is in the match matters, obviously. I don't want to burn 2 timeouts before 15. That's another like general rule I have. And these are just frameworks to kind of make sure you still have what you need towards the end of that set. But I don't love calling a quick timeout at the beginning of the game. The only situation where I might within the first 4 points is if the vibe is not it. You know what I mean? And every coach can kind of feel that whenever they step back out on the court and it's just off. Like something is off. Hard to contextualize into tangible
It's a feel.
objects, but yeah, it's a feeling, and I think every coach has felt it and knows that feeling. Like, pull the trigger. To me, that's the time. Like, correct the ship right now instead of letting them kind of fumble their way into it. And like, if it doesn't feel right, and it's drastic, like let's see if we can correct ship pretty quick. Now, I think there's definitely scenarios where you want to force your team to work through certain situations and hardships, and I think there's learning to be had through those, but you got to kind of pick and choose when those are important.
Yeah.
But that vibe piece is a real thing. Okay. The other time I maybe am a little quicker to a timeout is if they're doing something completely against the way that we prepared, because we're going to need to regroup and talk about our new plan of attack of how we're going to do it. So if we scouted a 6-2 all the time and they're running a 5-1 with a lot of back row attack stuff, we're going to need an early timeout to talk about how we're going to go through those adjustments. But other than that, it's that feeling. It's can I break momentum? Can I make this server think about what they're about to do for the next minute and a half? Like, I think those are all good reasons.
What about club?
Club, it's a lot of the same stuff. I think 80% of timeouts are because the vibe of the court isn't great, and you can tell something not positive is going to continue happening or about to happen. It's to stop a run. It's to try and make an adjustment. I think 80% are about those timeouts. I think in club, we see a lot of it. You probably don't see it in college because the coaches are more experienced, but in club, you see a lot of teams who are going to lose a match, and they haven't used both timeouts. I think that's an opportunity. You're leaving a card on the table as a coach where you could have done something,
Yeah.
Don't give up on your team. Don't give up on a set. And I have a little bit of a segue after that about not giving up on a set. But I also see a lot of timeouts taken on point 24.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say.
And it's 24 to 18, you're taking a timeout. So, I mean,
you're too late.
You could have burned that a while ago.
Yep.
You're too late.
And I think the lesson that I learned growing up, coaching when I was young, is, you are telling a story in those timeouts. And when you think about the story you're telling in the beginning of the season during those timeouts, and then the story you're telling at the end of the season during those timeouts, they're going to sound really different. But if you leave those timeouts on the table and you lose a match, you're giving up on the chance to try an adjustment. You're giving up on the chance to see how your team's going to react with this kind of feedback. You're throwing away a chapter out of your team's story that could have changed, the next chapter or the next match. So I really think that whatever you're saying in those timeouts, you're trying something, even if it's just a simple game plan. Let's get back to doing these things, but you're trying something, and you should never ever give up on a set because you're getting blown out, 20-6. Burn the second timeout. Let's try something. Let's see how my team reacts to it.
Yeah, refocus on a more tangible goal right now, right? Building momentum into the next set. Like, let's be really good in this phase. That's going to allow us to be good in the next set and continue to move forward instead of just sitting and eating points for the rest of that set.
Yeah, timeouts. I think that's the biggest thing for club coaches is timeouts aren't there to help save a win. Mm-hmm. They're there to build your team, and that could still look like a loss.
Yeah. I think the thing I see a good amount that I would caution against is the emotional response timeout.
Yes.
It's like that ball that lands between three people and fired up coach gets up, timeout. I'm like, all right, what good is about to come from what's about to happen? You know what I mean? Those like obscure miscommunication plays, like they happen every time. They happen at the highest level of D1. It's part of life. Like, can we just refocus, next ball? Like, can we just keep going forward instead of burning what could be a really useful timeout later?
Sure.
Because we got a little emotional about or frustrated about what was going on.
I have like a little bit of a counter to that. I think in the beginning of the season, if those things happen, I think it's more reasonable to take a timeout in those situations, and you teach them in that timeout, here's what we're going to say when those type of things happen. And then if that happens again in the future, you don't take that timeout. You've laid the groundwork for how you expect us to play out of that situation. You know what I mean? I think part of the timeouts you take early in the season are so important. You want to build some habits by saying that a drop tip isn't going to be acceptable. That might be worth a timeout, depending on the situation. You're also considering the score. We give up a tip on the first point, you're probably not taking a timeout. Give up a tip during a close match in the 20s, maybe that's worth a timeout. Because I want to teach my team that we can't lose this way. Here's what we're going to do. And if that happens again, a couple of tournaments down the line, you've had that conversation with them. You expect them to now regroup in the huddle instead of having to burn a timeout on that situation.
I feel like
that makes sense from a club season duration perspective.
For sure.
I don't typically view volleyball through that lens, so that makes sense to me. But collegiately, like, our timeout structures don't really change because we're in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's we don't have forever.
Do you feel like you see that a lot in college matches that you're scouting or that you'll see a lot of emotional timeouts like that?
No, not particularly.
Just all mostly score based.
Yeah, score based stuff. Like, occasionally, coaches will be hot about something, but it's usually not the first time, right? It's this kid keeps hitting down the line. We're like, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? It's that type of stuff. But
yeah, it's interesting.
Not as much like immediate knee-jerk reaction timeouts to. It's mostly the miscommunication stuff, like little things that I think aren't that big a deal, or will get worked out. But I hear what you're saying from the club perspective.
I think from club, high school, I think new coaches, I think it's be planful. I think that's what, like, when I hear emotional timeouts, I'm like, you took a timeout and you had no plan.
Yeah, you're just like,
Yeah, like, crap. Oh, timeout. And then you're like, all right, now what am I actually going to talk about?
yeah.
Because I think, and the reason why I believe that strongly is because your team is coming off the court for support. They're coming off for either guidance, for a strategy change, or some level of input that they can then take to the court to be successful. So if you're taking a timeout and you don't have a plan, you're just burning one of the two options in that set to give your team some additional information to be successul. So be planful. So tactically, you guys have any good tips or pet peeves even around how you huddle up? Team comes over. Do you have them sit? Do you have them stand? Do you have them bunch up? Do you have them hold shoulders? Like, there's all these different types of ways. But I think everyone kind of falls into one or two things that you like.
Right.
What do you like?
I'll say when I coach club, I'm a big physical contact guy, like connectedness. I'm big on high fives, physical touch. Like, can we bond without saying anything type of thing. So I really liked close-knit huddle, hands behind each other's backs. Like, we're all in this. We're one circle. We're one unit. I like that concept. It also, like, doesn't force me to talk so loud in maybe a quieter gym situation. I don't want the world to know all the things that we're talking about. So it allows me to even just keep my volume more calm, right? Like, sometimes when we talk loud, it can be perceived as yelling, when really, no, it's just loud in the gym and I need you to hear what I'm saying. But I can't control what my face looks like when I talk loud versus when I talk soft. So it might look like I'm yelling, and I don't need parents being like, man, he was really yelling during that timeout. It's like, no, we're right next to the speaker. It was super loud. So that from a club smaller perspective. Collegiately, I think there's a couple different, right? You can do tight circle. You can do seated with people behind. You can do seated with wrapped around circle. I think the thing you run into is you are generally in louder environments than you are in club. So how do you make sure everybody can hear? Whether that's coach on a swivel or just making sure like everyone has an eye line to whoever's speaking to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because 1 point later, you might be on the bench and now you're subbed in and you're like, oh, crap, what was that defensive adjustment that we made in the timeout because I couldn't hear?
Right.
So I think thinking about how you structure is important to make sure everybody's getting the information that you need.
I'm the same way. Like, smaller teams, I want them shoulders, like, close. I want to try and control what's behind me if I can. Because I don't want drifting. I don't want drifting eyes. You know. So if there's like a blank wall, I'm in front of that wall, and that's all they can see is me and a wall. But club tournament, you can't really control that as best you can during club practices. When you have a bigger team, it's hard to have a huddle that can stay close knit. So, like, do you put people behind the bench? That's what I did when I was coaching high school. We had people on their court sit down. Everyone else came behind the bench, and now I could still look at everybody relatively easy.
But they can all look at the Jumbotron and see whatever marketing thing is being.
Is that
that's a real thing.
That's about
Anyway.
Yeah, we didn't have a Jumbotron in high school.
Fair.
But yeah, club, it's definitely shoulders. I love the idea of like team bonding through contact. That stuff's really good. I might still yell sometimes, so it's not a product of me trying to keep my voice down, but I definitely want them feeling together. Super important.
I think just the essence of having a plan and everyone knows what they're doing, I think also creates some consistency. Also saves time. You only have a certain amount of seconds in that period. So if everybody already knows where they're going and you do it every single time, you save time and you have more time to coach.
Yeah.
But I think when I see a disorganized huddle at timeout, it's a reflection of kind of sometimes the team, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more organized you can be, whatever you decide that you want to do, I think it's preference really, but it needs to be organized. You need to talk about those things. We always kid around and like, did you practice your warm up? you should also practice what you're going to do in
Practice
the
your
timeouts.
Yeah.
You should do those things in training so that you have it's muscle memory again when you get to it's something you can control.
Yeah,
So,
and go ahead.
That's a legit early season thing that we will do. Like if we're playing a game in practice, we'll call a timeout and all right, we called a timeout. Here we're huddling and this is what it should look like and this is what we talk about when we call a timeout. And then here they called a timeout. Here's what we talk about and here's what it should look like. I think that's important to set those standards so that it can be consistent and you kind of eliminate some of the emotion that goes into the timeout because we are getting in together, we're getting into our spots, and then we're ready to take information and go ready to implement. So
It's not super popular in club, but I'm sure we've all seen it in high school, college, where they call a timeout and then they get into like position groups. Did you guys do that? Have you seen that? Like, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
that is probably my favorite thing. We did that when I was at Cornell College for a long time. That's a Meekerism for sure, but I love the investment it creates in your position group by allowing them, if you have a 90-second timeout, maybe 30 seconds of like get together, what are you seeing, where are my out shots, that kind of stuff. That also allows coaches to meet without everyone else just sitting there and talking, doing whatever. You know what I mean? Like that might be meaningful, having everybody else in that huddle if you have a great leader or like a rah pump up kid, like that could be meaningful, but overall I think there's more tangible information to be had if your position groups are focused on that stuff when they're on the bench, and it makes the bench kids feel more involved, right? You want to give them ownership over something that directly influences the game. This is how you do it. Find a shot for the kid that's in your position, right? If they succeed, we all succeed. So I love that. And then I still want 45 seconds to a minute for me to get whatever I need to get out to the whole team. Now, logistically, that's a lot of moving parts. Can we be efficient? Can they all go to the specific spots so that when we regroup, it's easy to get back in? That's maybe the thing that takes a little bit more practice if you want to go about that approach. But as far as value add during a short amount of time, I think that's a way to maximize.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard during club because you have one setter, that's your position group.
Right, sure.
You know, like it's just, that's not really anything you see during the club season. But like if we're fortunate enough to have a couple assistant coaches on the bench, then you can take the setter with the setting coach and now the other coach can talk to the team, or you're able to pull some kids if they need some more individual time, something specific to them. That happens a lot. It's something that definitely my teams do a lot. I coached with a team that did position groups, and like there was nothing being ever said in those groups. So it was like, or the girls didn't know what to look for. So like, I think you said some important things. Like if those groups are having great dialogue, it makes so much sense because there's so much information then that's specific to them that they can gain. But if the bench doesn't know what to look for, if you don't teach your kids to know what to look for, then what's going to happen in those conversations, you know? Yeah,
that's more of a whole system way of going about how you treat your position groups and how you train that position. And if you do and encourage them and it's all one family and we succeed, I succeed, we all succeed type of mentality and are training that communication in practice when that person's off, then like it's more than just throw them into groups in a timeout and hope that they're saying the right things.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It does take more investment, but if we're trying to value add, man, what a great way to do it.
For sure.
And then just there were a preparation for if you do need to call their number, right? They're so much more locked in.
And they're locked in.
So
love that. Yeah.
the 90-second timeout has kind of changed the game in timeouts, though. I mean, from a 60 to a 90, there's so much more options you have. If you have coaches meet, what are some of the things that you guys are talking about as a coaching staff while your position groups or your rah-rah kid is doing their thing? Like for that first 20, 25, 30 seconds, what are the things that you want to highlight from your staff?
I think it is big, and I'm a big proponent of like boil down your timeouts to 3 things, right? I'm going to give you 3 keys. We can't really process more than that and act on them. So how can I keep it simple? So if I'm meeting with the coaches, I'm like, all right, what you got? They're going to say something. Other assistant will say something. I might have something. Okay, boil it down. Those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about in this. And then Now we go in, it's clear, concise. We know what we're going to do. We know the adjustments we're about to make, and then we tell the team and go. Like, I do think it is completely relative to who called the timeout, right? What kind of information and how long we're going to take to deliver that information.
If you're rolling,
matters,
you know, like,
right? Yeah, if they called the timeout, we're talking about what's likely going to happen from a block, or how we're going to scheme, where we think the ball's going to go. And then I want to get back onto the court, right? We got the momentum, we got the juice. I want them coming out of a timeout and seeing us on the court ready to go. I think that's an intimidating factor, right? If you're down bad and you come out and they're like, watch this kid, this stuff, and everybody's ready to go, and the server's back, and you're like, gosh, we got to do this again. Here we go. And then I think that's a big advantage. So
Yeah, I love that.
a little different with club, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that, you know, I've got two assistants on my team, but most of the time you just have one assistant. So I think a great head coach is trying to empower them. So I want your feedback, but I think you spend too much time in that conversation, you're not going to be able to hit the things you want to hit with a club team. And those timeouts are 60 seconds for us, so we don't get as much time, you know? And there's probably more things that our team is probably worried about than an advanced college player that just knows that they might just need to pass better, or you know, like their scouting plan was more specific than maybe what our plan was, and they know that the college kid just has to execute better, where the club kid, you're maybe dealing with more confusion that you have to try and tackle in a timeout. So I think the conversations you have with your coach after a match in club, super important, so that you guys are seeing the game the same way. And then as the season goes, during those timeouts, it's just a little more organic on, we know we need to tackle these things because the problems are so obvious probably in club versus a sophisticated college match. You know what I mean?
Even as a high school program, if you have a couple of coaches, I think it's also really important to make sure that everyone knows what their role is, right? Ensuring that, hey, you're looking at defense, you're looking at offense, or whatever it might be. You're looking at all the stats that are coming in live feed or whatever it might be. Yeah. And as you come into a timeout, those 90 seconds are precious. It seems like a long time, but it goes by really quickly.
It does go by so fast.
Being efficient, being prepared, understanding what your role is. I love the three things. You know, it's, hey, you know, what are we doing? What are they doing? And what do we need to change? You know, and I think that's oversimplify it, because I think the biggest criticality I have with some timeouts is that you're going too deep and then you completely lost. Like your team is now like, all right, we're completely changing something, or you're giving me too much information and we're just gonna go back on the court. Yeah. So relative to let's kind of break it up in two different. The timeout was called by the opposition. What are some of the kind of the key things that you really want to highlight in that situation? You mentioned a little bit of that, but kind of let's dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, so opponent calls timeout. That means we are in our point scoring phase. We're serving. So I think the biggest thing is we want tangible, actionable things. Like if we are rolling, what actions are we going to take with what's about to happen? So we talk about the play, who's likely to get the ball, how we're going to defend, and that can feel like more than three things a lot of the time. But if it's directed at who needs to know that thing. So if they're in a circle but also in position groups, that's like a useful thing, that the pins are standing by the pins. So I can be like, we're taking line on this kid. We're going to shade this middle in front, expect to go three, push, and then so-and-so's on the bick, middle back. This is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Everybody knows there's a clear plan. They feel confident coming back out with what they want to do. I think the biggest thing when opponents call a timeout is, how do you maintain confidence, make sure everybody feels clear, and we can keep momentum. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if we're on a run and they're the one that called a timeout, we're talking to our kids about, hey, we're scoring these ways. Plan on potentially seeing them try to do this. Yeah. They might try blocking more line, or they're going to maybe throw in a tip. So let's make sure we're one step ahead on their future response coming out of a timeout. And if you're playing against a good coach who is going to throw some adjustments, that's definitely something you want to prep your team for, because you know something's coming. And if you can keep your team one step ahead in the most simple way you can put it, that's a great way to maybe keep a run going a little longer, trying to maybe prepare them for what's going to come next.
I think if you're the one who's on the run and you're getting the opposition's calling timeout, you have to understand why they're calling their timeout.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, they're calling timeout to stop our momentum, or we're killing them on the outside, or whatever it might be. I think you need to defend their change of momentum with, hey, how do we keep the momentum and continue to swag your kids up, and keep them at high. That the fact that, hey, these are things we're doing really well. We got to. I sometimes it's hard to bring in the opportunities or things we need to adjust in an opponent's timeout. So just kind of focusing on what's going well and how do we get. I like getting on the court early. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we're rolling, get them back on the court, get those 6 kids in that huddle again and ready to roll. The longer they're on the sideline, the longer it feels like it's a true break from the match.
Yeah. Good point.
What about if you're calling the timeout? What are some of the? We talked a lot about the 3 things and whatnot, but I get maybe more non-tactical messaging, emotion. Like what type of like messages are you really trying to get to your team?
Yeah, if I'm calling a timeout, the first thing I want to do when they get into that huddle is gauge the vibe. Where are we at? Because maybe that is the only thing that we need to talk about. You know what I mean? We can't get to the tactical ABC if the big issue is we're not connected and we're not communicating or something like that. You know what I mean? So gauge the vibe. Where are we at? What's the body language looking like? If it's not great, how do we build confidence in that? And I think a big one's encourage everybody to trust themselves, trust the decisions that you're making. We're doing good things. We just might not be executing perfect. But how do you make them feel okay in this situation that I had to call a timeout? So obviously we're not okay, but how do you make them feel okay?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one. And then I want to, again, back to tangible, I want to give them ways to score, right? So we're going to run this play. We don't need a perfect pass. Get it up. We still got 3 good options. If you can't rip, which I want us to be aggressive, here's where you can, here's your outshot. Here's where we can still stress, right? Give them a plan that they can trust and feel confident in executing. That will help build their confidence as well.
Yeah, I think, and I'm looking forward to your answer on this because kids are younger, and I think the emotional response to your coach calling a timeout is much different, I think, at the younger level than it is in the collegiate level. So, like when you call a timeout, what are some of the things that you were trying to? You're wanting to continue the confidence part, right? Is you're calling a timeout for a reason. However, you don't want them to fall deeper into the hole, I guess.
Yeah, I think when I'm calling timeout, the first thing I want to make sure I'm being diligent about is the posture, the way I'm talking to my team. I want to project how I expect them to act in this situation. I'm not going to start freaking out or anything because I don't want them to assume that that's how we're going to act in those situations. So if I'm calling a timeout, also I hope there's still points to be played. Not calling
not a 24.
Yeah. But I'm definitely at most times always trying to bring a whiteboard into the equation or a little clipboard into the equation because I want to visually show them the things that we're trying to adjust. I also think in club, we call a timeout and club kids think that timeout's being called based on the very last thing that happened. Yeah. So we get blocked, the hitter comes into the timeout, we're calling a timeout because she got blocked. And maybe kids at young ages also maybe perceive that. So I think in that conversation with your team, you're trying to help them understand that we're in this situation not because we got blocked. We're in this situation because we passed the last 5 out of 7 balls out of system, or we're having to bump set these 5 balls in a row. So drawing out, hey, we need the pass to be more here, or whatever the main thing is, and why we're in that situation, and making sure that's communicated, and maybe not even talking about the girl getting blocked because that's really not the thing at all. Maybe you're having a side combo, just telling her, hey, keep swinging high, like we're gonna cover you. So I think that's the important thing with club kids is trying to show them visually and talk to them about here's the main thing that's happening.
I like that. And the singling out the player in the group, whether it's well-intended or not, can definitely have negative ramifications. I've also seen it work positively, though, if you have that type of kid that responds to that. But it's like, hey, keep ripping, we're going to cover you. Like, that's a great swing. Like, that could be positive in both the like one-on-one and in the group. It just depends on the type of kid that you have, but you need to know those personalities. And if you're unsure, I would err to doing it alone, right? Because we don't want to single them out in a group of their peers and friends if we don't have to.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you're still in servicey, probably you're calling timeout. Can you call a play? Can you get let's here's what we're trying to do to get out of this situation, and then let's see if we can get better at whatever the main thing is.
I mean, I think it is you have to be really intentional when you're calling the timeout, because especially younger kids, like that emotional response is going to be that I did something wrong with whoever that last play was, or we're doing something wrong. And I love like posture and everything. I think that's your kids as well as yourself. So for coaches that are out there, younger coaches especially, the hey, I'm going to fire them up and kind of like being emotional, that works sometimes. But you're also going to be their lightning rod from just what you want. So if you want them to have more confidence, you can't be frustrated. If you want them to play even keel and think and be thoughtful, then you need to be planful and thoughtful and even keeled. Their representation, they're gonna personify the things that they're seeing on the bench, especially in this moment when they're looking for you for support, because you are the one who took a timeout.
Yeah, I would say don't rush into that huddle. Like 5 seconds for you to take a beat and regroup can be as important to any effectiveness or the message that you get into that you get to them. I'm like stumbling because I'm thinking about all the situations where I just like, no, we need this. And like, it's so clear to me that this is what we need. So I rush in and do it. But yeah, that's not what they need. They need me to take 5 seconds and be like, all right, we're good. Here we go. This is what it is. But I struggle with that sometimes.
Last couple of club seasons, I've tried to be more intentional about keeping in mind it's only January, it's only February. Like where we're at in the season, and what do I want my team to get a little bit better at out of this timeout. And honestly, like talking to them about that too, being like, hey, we don't need to be good right now, but let's see if we can be good in these next 10 points trying to do this. And then when the game's done, just talking about like, listen, we're trying to win at nationals. We're trying to win whatever the main tournament is, whatever the end goal is. Like these situations that we were in, they might repeat themselves, right? So we want to keep in mind that we don't want to forget this, but let's try and create a response that we can maybe try and duplicate again later on if it happens again too.
I think it's so connected to the score that I think the more you can try to separate the timeout from the score and more in like, hey, these are things that we want to do. And especially in club when it's a journey, right? It's a long journey. Refer to episode X for the length of club. But I think you can try to get the wins even though you don't win those points after the timeout. So if it's, hey, we really need to focus on our platforms and freeze and et cetera, giving those 3 words and really understanding like, okay, even though we may have lost that set or that match, we called these timeouts and we improved on these things that we talked about in those timeouts. I think that's important, especially in the development phase.
The bad things are a blessing in disguise if you teach them that way.
Yeah. Last thing on timeouts, any pet peeves? Timeout management, just things that I think that you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but let's recap on some of the things that if you're a newer coach, like some of the things you want to stay away from or do. Like one, no 24 or game 5 14 time. Like let's stay away from that.
Yeah, that's one that I see a lot when I'm watching a court as it gets to 24 and they call a timeout. I'm like, yeah, it's too late now. Yeah. Like there's some stat that it's like if the score is 20-17, those next 2 points are gonna, like if it gets to 22-19, the team A that's leading wins 80% of those sets. Yeah. So that sequence is really, really important. I'm going to burn one there versus once we get to 24, it's pretty much a done deal, right? The odds are at like 95, 96% win for that leading team at that point. Now, miraculous things happen, but that's definitely one of them. The emotional reaction to rush in, I don't know what benefit we're going to get from the rest of that timeout. That's something I still need to work on, but that's a thing.
Drinking water on the court.
Yes. Unless you're doing
And then
something.
you have to get in the court and you stop the game, clean the water.
Yeah.
And then in club, you're not supposed to be on the court anyways. I'm sure college, you're not supposed to be on the court anyways. But the court is so close to the bench in club, it's like you see half the team hanging on in the court still, and then the ref, if they're doing their jobs, like get off the court. So now your huddle is interrupted by a ref who's like, you guys need to get off the court.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone's got those water bottle totes that everyone's carrying around for their team, and you throw on the ground too hard, now there's water everywhere.
Splashes. Yeah.
That's definitely. I mean, it's not a pet peeve, but you just see it all the time. It's so preventable. What else?
Taking a timeout because of a questionable officiating call.
Oh yeah.
That's one to stay away from too, because you're not going to change it. I mean, we all get upset and frustrated with sometimes because we feel differently than an official may have saw something. But taking a timeout to maybe try to address it, or that's not the right time. To do that. I think that's one. Taking a timeout when you're serving, believe it or not, like I don't know if this is totally a pet peeve of mine, but like you're kind of killing your own momentum because you obviously just won the point, which is why you're serving. That's another one.
I'd say like taking a late timeout if you're up by a good amount. I think we're thinking about the exact same situation.
100%.
That's a bad look. You want to make some enemies. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. I think it's probably happened to all of us in one situation that I know I happened to me, and that's just a bad look. It's just not we're a coaching fraternity.
Yeah.
And
we're all peers. And
you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like the only way I could maybe say that's okay is like if they're subbing in their entire bench or something, And for some reason they couldn't do it during the next play, I don't know.
That's not how subbing works.
Yeah, that's not how I'm thinking like basketball.
Yeah, right.
But,
Yeah, you're like,
clear
the benches off.
yeah, that's not a great look. I agree.
That's not a good look either. Yeah. Oh man. Well, I'm hoping that the viewers out there, you got a couple of tips. I think use your timeouts wisely. They're a tool in your tool bag during a match, and I think be planful.
When you don't have very many tools available to you,
100%.
right? That they are more important than I think people give them credit for.
Yeah,
Plan for it.
I think I think most club coaches are really good about using both timeouts during the match if they need them, right? If they're losing the match or whatever. But I think only calling timeouts based on the score is something you also want to be careful of. Like if the vibe's been bad for 3 points in a row, like it's okay to burn a timeout if the game is still kind of close. I think you don't want that stuff to linger into the end of the match. So I think it's two-sided. You want to take timeouts that help with the score of the match, but you also want to make sure that long term your team is moving about each point in a certain way. So trying to gauge both those things.
I mean, you know your team best, right? And utilize those timeouts and be planful. And if that's because of the vibe, is because of the score, is because of system change, or whatever it is, if you have a plan, then it's a good timeout.
Yeah.
And I think that's lean into it, be confident with it, but never turn a timeout on us. We're going to be here for the next couple of episodes. And I figured I was going to end somewhere exactly the way we started, with a little bit of mayhem. So until next time, blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.